Hey there, is your Mastodon feed getting a little bit too busy or showing you things that you maybe don't want to see and you want a little bit of help with it from the computer? Well, you've come to the right place. I save it every time, but you know, these videos, they're focused on these topics. I'm going to show you today with a Consultatron Mastodon account how you can actually tune your algorithm and your feed to show you a little bit more of what you want and a little bit less of what you don't want. So first of all, yes, algorithm. Mastodon has an algorithm. Everything has an algorithm. Algorithm has kind of got a bad rap these days because to most people it means the crushing, engagement-driven algorithms that people who use things like Mastodon have fled Facebook and Twitter and stuff to avoid. But all an algorithm is a set of instructions that a computer uses to process information or do something. In this case, all that the algorithm is doing is it's taking the posts that are cached in your local server and it's looking through them and it's going, are there any accounts in here that this Consultatron account follows? So here are the accounts. And are there any hashtags that this user follows? So anything that's got new clients or handshakes or emotions, it's going to show them. And then it shows them in roughly reverse chronological order. So you scroll down, and the further you scroll down, the older the posts are until you hit the edge of your cache, which will happen if I go back like 8 days or whatever. So what we're going to do today is tailor this home feed a little bit so we see a little bit more of what we want to see and a little bit less of what we don't want to see. This is a very particular moment in time. Pope Francis died on the day that I'm recording this. And so there's a lot of Pope Francis news going on, mixed in with your usual modern life struggles and problems. The first thing you can do to alter this feed is mute. Muting someone tells the algorithm, do not include this person in the feed for a certain amount of time. Muting someone is pretty easy. It's just mute Corey Doctorow here, who I wouldn't mute normally. I feel like I should just say this, sorry, Corey, I'm choosing between demonstrating by muting Indigenous youth and the New York Times reporting on Pope's death. So, it's really tough here for a humble tutorialsman to show something without setting someone off. But let's just say I want to mute Corey. So typically, the moment you decide, I think I want to mute this person will be when they're sitting in your timeline. You can open their profile and click on these three dots and hit mute. But I think most of the time you'll be experiencing it like this. You click the three dots, you hit mute, and then Mastodon tells you the deal. Basically, a mute is a polite way to not hear from someone. And you can choose underneath the options how long you mute them for. And I think that there are 3 categories of mute, which are for different situations. So the first is the kind of 6 hours to 24-hour mute. These kind of 24-hour mutes are for a very specific situation that is probably best represented by the XKCD comic, there is something wrong on the internet. It is when it is time to go to bed and it is time to stop arguing with someone about whatever. Usually these are situations where the person's fine, you like the person, but you just want a commitment mechanism to disengage from a conversation and go do something else. The next stage is kind of a medium-term mute, and this one is really good for if there's a person who you like and you are friends with, but they're kind of on a tear about a specific topic. They're posting a lot, lots and lots of multiple threads. They're filling up your whole timeline with, this kind of call to action for a cause. You've already donated, you already did your part. And now you just kind of want that to not be in your feed from that person so that you can read the stuff that you actually want to read. Now, there's a third, which is the until I unmute them, like the permanent mute. The reason you would do this is because you basically want to unfollow them, but you don't want them to know. So permanent mute isn't very good because the person won't realize that messages that they're sending to you or things that they're atting you are not getting through to you. They'll be thinking, I've sent a private mention, so they will be seeing it. So it's the kind of thing where maybe you avoid the discomfort up front of them one day possibly going, oh, they're not following me anymore. I thought that we were a mutual follow. But you swap it out for a catastrophically uncomfortable, oh, you muted me, which I think is actually kind of worse. Also, if you mute someone, you're still following them. And so your server is still kind of like sucking up all the stuff that they say and storing it in your local database. And if you're on a small instance, like a single user instance, you're using that storage space to store something that you're never going to see. So I'm not a big fan of a permanent mute. I think there's a few instances where you might want to use it. So you're working with someone and maybe you followed them when you were trying to get the job and now you don't really want to see their political opinions or whatever they're talking about outside of work hours. But the thing is, if they ever send you a message and they realize that you've muted them, you could be in some trouble. There could be miscommunication that could infect you professionally, I think, worse than them thinking, oh, I thought we were following each other. So I'm not a big fan of a mute. Wouldn't suggest using it. I think that it's a temporary fix. There is a 30-day mute, so you could do that and kind of renew it. You choose the appropriate mute for your use case and you hit mute. And I really like mute because there are lots and lots of people that I know who have strong opinions, who like to have debates, and I really like them and enjoy hearing from them. But there is a point where I'm like, well, I think we've outlined our case. That's that. I would rather give them a mute and commit to being like, it's the end of a discussion for me, but I still want to hear what they have to say, like tomorrow about a different topic. So that's your first little tweak of your timeline. The bigger thing though is filters. Now, filters are extremely useful because if you're scrolling through a timeline these days, well, I can see a few reasons why you might want to not see this all the time. So filters are honestly extremely useful. It's actually what prompted me to make this video because I realized how much I wanted a filter. There has been a lot of news recently about another country which fills my timeline, and at this point, I just realized it was eating up a lot of my time. So a good example would be Consultatron here. Being a robot that is an expert as a consultant has no interest in sports. But the problem is you're following the CBC news account. If we open this up and we scroll through, we can see, there's news, but there's actually quite a lot of sport in here, and Consultatron has no interest in hockey or tennis or whatever, right? So how do we fix this with a filter? If we go to preferences here, and we go to filters, no filters. So let's add a sports filter. So sports, and this will be a permanent one. I'm just going to choose a few phrases. So we got NHL, the PWHL, probably be another good one. Oh, Spaceball. Now, you don't want to go too overboard because obviously metaphors often have sports in them. So, like team or whatever is going to pull up other stuff, right? So I think it's a good idea to kind of go a little light, and then you can always alter this algorithm later. Now we can choose what contexts we want to use the filter in. I would suggest if you're using it for this kind of algorithmic purpose, just using home and lists. The others are like more for filtering for like offensive content. It's like where I don't want to even see a reply that says a word when I go to a profile or I go to a feed elsewhere. I don't want to see this word. It's not so much for the algorithm tweaking as it is for the like handling profanity or something offensive. Now, under filter action, you can choose to hide it with a warning or hide it completely. And it's a good idea, I think, when you're tuning the algorithm to click hide with a warning, hit save. Now we have our sports filter saved, and I'd recommend keeping hide with a warning for a day just to make sure that it's not falsely filtering stuff that you actually would like to see. So if we scroll through here, we'll just see if it's triggering on stuff that we want it to trigger on. So far, so good. I haven't seen any sports stuff. Oh, there we go. Let's have a look. Show. Great. It picked up on the basketball post. Let's scroll a little bit further down. Oh, there we go. Some more filters. Let's see. Sports world mourns soccer-loving Pope Francis. Here's a good example of where it might hide something that you don't want to hide. Honestly, there is so much Pope Francis news in this feed. I don't think that if you're a person who doesn't like sports, you'll be wanting to read the sports take on Pope Francis. It picked up the Edmonton Oilers, the Edmonton NHL team. It picked up this tennis. Great. It's nice. CBC, they have this tag at CBC Sports News, and they always say post it into sports. So you know what we could do? We could grab this and copy it, and it will help us get a little bit more accurate with our filter. We can go add the keyword, sports news. Great. And now, once you're happy with the algorithm, you can hit hide completely. And there you go. There's your sports algorithm. And now you have this kind of feed, which, well, I mean, I can scroll down forever and show you that it doesn't show these words, but you just have to trust me, there's no sports. Now, the good thing is with this method, you can still go to the CPC profile, and if I scroll down, I can still see sports. It's kind of behaving like kind of the lighter algorithms that you used to get around like 2011, 2012, where it was kind of showing stuff that had more engagement or that was more interesting to us. But when you clicked on the profile, you could still see everything that a person had said. And I really like that system, It's there. It's just not kind of a default thing that's there. Because most of us, I mean, if you're anything like me, you spend a lot of time on your main home feed. That's the place where you don't want to see, in this case, lots of stuff about sports. Now, you can use the filters in a similar way to the mute function, where it can be set to look for a word and temporarily filter it out. So as you can see today, being the day that the Pope died, there is tons and tons and tons of stuff about the Pope. And you might just be at the point where you're like, all right, I got it. I don't think I want to read any Pope news for the next wee while. So you can hit filters, add new filter, just like Popeless, remove from the home feed the phrase Pope. You can hide it completely and expire this after, say, 1 week. Save this new filter. And then if I go back to Mastodon and click on home, you can see my feed is now free from Pope-related news. And I mean, hope that people aren't finding this too offensive of an idea. Maybe you are a big Pope fan and you find it very upsetting to be constantly reminded of his death, and you just want to kind of not think about that anymore for a couple of weeks. Well, there you go. So that's the main, currently built into Mastodon ways that you can tailor and tweak the algorithm and see a home feed that works a little bit better for you. So mutes and filters in Mastodon are super powerful, and they're powerful enough to help you make your home feed a feed that you want to read more, that you find more enjoyable to use, and that shows you more relevant information to you by filtering out or hiding things which you don't really want to engage with at the time. However, these tools are really more moderation tools. The filters, they're really made for words that are upsetting or annoying. Mutes are more made to make sure your home feed doesn't have a flurry of activity from an account that you're not interested in, maybe just for now. These tools, they're pretty good and they work in a pinch, but it does feel like a stopgap measure. And I think that there's a future that we're going to see in the next couple of years where user-defined algorithms appear inside Mastodon clients on the front end, and then probably at some point in the actual back end, making use of all the data that's available there. And obviously, when that comes, I will be here to make a tutorial on it and show you how I tweak my algorithm so that I see less sport and more Pope, or more sport and less Pope, or more sport and more Pope, or less sport and less Pope. I believe the solution to the algorithms is letting you decide. And that was more important than whether the algorithm exists or not in the first place.